So today's date is 15 January 2022, and I have the pleasure of sitting down with Aaron Schumer
Good morning.
in Knoxville, Virginia. So Aaron, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? That kind of thing.
Sure. I was born in Hartford, Connecticut. My dad was actually an engineer, so we moved around quite a bit. Lived in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia. And then when I was about 8 years old, we moved to California. And I grew up in California, San Jose, California. And then graduated high school, worked in various jobs, and then decided to join the Army during Desert Storm.
Okay.
So yeah.
Did you have any other relatives that were members of the military either?
So my grandfather was he was Army during
Okay.
World War II, and but my middle brother actually joined the 101st Airborne. He was Airborne Air Assault Combat Engineer, and it was the time that Iraq had invaded Kuwait, and I had no real intention of joining the military whatsoever. But I'm not even sure how to explain it. I just know that one day I just wanted to know what it was all about. And my brother was already on his way over to Saudi Arabia. And I woke up one day and said, I really want to know what this is about. And I want to have my experience as well, too. So I went to the recruiter's office and, did a lot of finagling because I want to make sure I got what I wanted from the military.
Right.
And then, I joined. And actually enlisted in late 1990. And then left for basic training in April of '91. I wasn't going to go to basic training in the middle of winter. So, so yeah.
Why the Army?
Why the Army? The Navy was just, being on a ship was not something I wanted to do. I honestly, I really wanted war. I wanted to know what war was about. At the time I thought Desert Storm was going to be sort of my generation's, Vietnam, not from any other perspective than it's just here was a major war. And growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, you get a lot of political views, and I wanted to know for myself what it was about. I wanted to know what it was to be in a war. I wanted that experience, and I honestly couldn't tell you why I didn't genuinely look at any other service. I just went straight for the Army. They sat me down and basically gave me any option I wanted, and I chose combat medic. So, yeah.
Any particular reason why you chose that career?
So originally I wanted to be a counterintelligence. I took the D-Lab test, got about 3/4 of the way through the D-Lab and realized this was just, I wasn't good. The made-up language. I was sitting in a room by myself, had a naval officer who didn't want to be in the room either, kept tapping his pen. So I just sat there, and then once you got to the 15-word sentence, and they ask you to go back to word 7, tell you how many syllables there were, I just put my pen down. I'm like, I think I'm good here. And honestly, that was, it's kind of come full circle because that's where I am now. But again, I really wanted to know what the war, but I also wanted to walk away with something. And medic was just something at that time that really, really appealed to me. It just had a lot for me. I thought maybe going medical would be something that I could carry on for a career outside the military as well too. And I loved it. I loved being a combat medic. I loved being a medic. I didn't carry it on as a career because working in hospitals and clinics I required a little more speed in life. And so anyway, I got out of being a medic after 4 years of active duty, a couple years in the reserves. I went to school for history and political science, and then September 11th happened, and I was right back at the same recruiter's office as I was a decade before.
Yeah. Did you deploy during the Gulf War?
So I was in basic training during the actual Gulf War,
right.
But when I got out of basic training, I did deploy the next year. I was in a medical unit under the 3rd Infantry Division in Germany, and I had heard through the grapevine that they were putting together a task force to go to the former Yugoslavia. And so I got to be on the expeditionary force to go down there with the 212th MASH, Operation Provide Promise. So we deployed, I was part of the first 100 to go down to Yugoslavia literally 2 days after Bill Clinton was elected president. So it was great. I mean, that was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. So I spent 6.5 months in the former Yugoslavia, working in a MASH hospital, and got to experience quite a bit of stuff. And then working with the United Nations was absolutely incredible because we got to work with, well, almost every European nation and some African and South American countries, and we just had an absolute blast.
Talk about what is a MASH hospital.
Sure.
I mean, most people know the TV show.
They know the TV show.
How is that compared to what it really is, especially in the 90s?
Honestly, there's, other than the fact that we lived in modern temperature-controlled tents at that time, it was a lot the same. And being with the United Nations, no self-respecting European countries going anywhere without their saunas and their alcohol. So we had plenty of wine. Every nation had their own bar set up. So we worked our butts off and got to go through a lot, but we also got to relax and enjoy everybody's company and while living in the middle of a war zone. So it was pretty incredible. But a MASH hospital, a Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. It's today they're known as Combat Support Hospitals. I think they're even changing those names now. But we built in a week a full tent city hospital in an old Croatian Air Force base, complete with electrical, plumbing, everything, and so it was pretty amazing. We did everything from ambulatory services, so we had our ambulances go out and pick people up, to full surgical, dental, physical therapy. So it was pretty amazing.
Right. And this is during what operation was this?
So this is Operation Provide Promise.
Okay.
And this was really, we were there to provide medical support for the United Nations while also supporting other operations to observe and essentially take measures to ensure the war didn't spread to neighboring countries, right, to sort of contain it. So it was a pretty amazing experience.
Right. I imagine you didn't see the casualty numbers.
Oh, we did.
You did?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were mass graves. There were, yes, we saw a lot of it. Everything. Yeah, there was. Yes, we saw quite a bit. We know that they were separating women and children, and then taking men and boys and executing them. And we know there were rape camps set up. A lot of the casualties we saw, we were really not allowed to take care of civilians because that would have showed that we were supporting one particular side, but we did, and we had to keep it very, very secure and secluded. One of the things that I will talk about that I thought was pretty incredible is we had a German C-130 on approach to the airfield one day when they just came under heavy fire. They radioed in that they were taking heavy fire and they had casualties on board. So we thought there was going to be a mass cal situation. Anyway, we get onto the aircraft. The pilot, the shrapnel and some parts of the aircraft had just gone into the pilot, and so you're basically taking care of people that you have a hard time believing they're still alive, getting them off the airplane. But things of that nature. We had an American contractor pilot that was shot down over in Bosnian airspace, and his helicopter, he managed to control the helicopter to go into the trees and disintegrated the helicopter. Louisiana Bob was the most amazing human being I've ever come across. I have no idea how he survived. I genuinely, to this day, I don't think anybody knows how he actually survived, but the Serbian farmer found him, still strapped to his seat, drug him, put him on the back of like a trailer bed of a tractor, ran into a British convoy who then radioed us, and we picked the guy up. And when we got him, his head was sliced open here, his jaw was broken, his nose was broken, he had burns to his neck, he had third-degree burns to his lower back, his arm had been ripped back, his leg was ripped. I mean, this guy was like a jigsaw puzzle, and due to his head injury, he was able to still talk. And the guy never remembered a thing. I actually interviewed him. I had I brought a camcorder with me at the time. I know camcorders, I don't know if they still exist anymore, but I got to do a one-on-one interview with him and just kind of doing what you're doing now, and it was fantastic. But he doesn't remember anything. He just knows that he was very thankful that we saved him. And well, Bob had his jaws wired shut. He really wanted a can of chili. That was the first thing he wanted. I said, Bob, you can't have a can of chili. You've been on a liquid diet for like 3 months. He goes, but I really want the chili, Aaron. I'm like, you're not getting a can of chili. One of my counterparts didn't quite know that he was on it. Had been anyway. Gave him a can of chili behind, and it was a very bad scene for poor Bob because his body just couldn't process and get rid of it, and
Right.
so it was. Anyway, it was absolutely hilarious. But no, we also got to work with Russians, which was pretty incredible. I think that was one of the more amazing things that life-changing experiences, and I say that not because for any other reason than I got to learn or see firsthand exactly the differences between U.S. and Russian military, and just how much we actually really give a crap about ourselves and our people. They, excuse me, I don't know how much you want me to get into this, but I'll tell you the one story that blew me away was we had 4 Russian casualties that we picked up, and they were in pretty bad shape, and they were injured because they were sitting in a shack, and this is like December time frame, so it's cold as hell in Yugoslavia, and it's all true. Russians they were crazy. They had a game of hot potato with a live hand grenade, and when the last guy figures the hand grenade's ready to go, they went to throw it out the window. Well, it's 20 degrees in the middle of winter. Do you keep your windows open? No, of course not. So they went to throw it out the window. Windows closed, bounced back, and it exploded. Right? They all survived, but some of them were in pretty bad shape, and so those were those. And then we got to take care of some Russian soldiers that they were in armored personnel carriers that ran over some anti-tank mines and really jacked them up. And we had to do some extractions of Russian soldiers from armored personnel carriers and brought them back to the hospital. And the doctors did amazing things. And I apologize, excuse me. And a couple guys had to have their legs amputated. And I only go into this story because what happened next was something extraordinary for all of us, and that was the Russian delegation came to visit them. We were taking care of them, and they came down and they were real cordial with us, and everybody was really nice. And then it was, I don't know if it was that night or the night after, middle of the night, a couple of the Russians they were wheeled out to the bathroom so they could use the bathroom, and it was taking a long time, and then all of a sudden somebody went out there and realized they were trying to commit suicide, and nobody could understand what was wrong. So we had the translator come in, and the Russian military. Hopefully things have changed in the country, but they came down and basically told their troops, "Yeah, you're no longer of use to Russia. There's nothing we can do for you. So, peace out. All the best to you."
Really?
Yeah. So our doctors called back to Walter Reed, had these guys fitted for prosthesis, and they taught them how to walk on prosthesis and use that, and then lo and behold, they were picked up by their own folks and taken back up. Anyways, the whole thing was like a massive cultural shock. But I also got a chance to sit back with translators and drink with some of the Russians and realize that they were a lot like just us. They were just kids off joining the military and having their experience. So it was pretty amazing. But yeah, Yugoslavia was incredible, and that was through 1992 to 93, and then I came back and got to do like the Nijmegen International Road March in Holland, and then I PCS'd out, went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and got to reception station at Fort Lewis. I was going to go out with 4th Air Defense Artillery, 9th Infantry Regiment, and I knew that because they looked at me and goes, "Oh yeah, you're going to Saudi Arabia." I'm like, "Saudi Arabia?" So I rotated to Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, and this was 94, 95. And I was at Dhahran the year before they blew up the apartment building in Dhahran. And so I was working the clinic, 24-hour clinic one day, and I got back from the clinic, and my buddy was like, "Go pack your bags. You're going to Kuwait tonight." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's pretty funny. I'm going to go to sleep." He's like, "No, go pack your bags. You're going to Kuwait tonight." Anyway, the Iraqis had moved back up on the border. They were threatening to come back down again, and more or less it was just them trying to test us. Yeah. So we went up to Camp Doha. I spent another month up there, and then nothing really happened. We just got to live in the middle of the desert for a month, and then I came back. We lived in Riyadh for a while. I was medical support to an air defense artillery unit for 6-7 months. well, they did their rotation through Saudi Arabia, so it was pretty awesome. And then got back from that, and I was out of the military a couple months later. And I loved being a medic. I just being gone all the time wasn't going to be 20 years. Wasn't going to be 20 years for me.
Yeah.
So
what years were you in Saudi Arabia?
So we got to Saudi in August of 1994, and then I left, I think February or March of '95, and then I was out of the Army in July. Yeah. So, or off active duty in July.
Right.
So
So fast forward September 11th, 2001.
Yep.
Tell me about that day. Your impressions.
Absolutely. I was living in downtown San Francisco. At the time, I was working in computers. I did a lot of computer arts and graphics, nothing spectacular, but just, I had just gotten married that year, and a very good friend of my wife. So my father, his whole family's from New York City. My father was born and raised in the Bronx. And so a good friend of my wife, she was also from New York. And it was early in the morning, and I got up for work, and my wife, and I can't remember if she called my wife or she called me directly, but it was my wife's friend Diane, and she just said, she gets me up, she goes, "Aaron, you need to turn on your television." And I said, "Why, what's going on?" It's 6 o'clock around. I'm like, I don't turn my television on. She goes, you need to turn the television on. An airplane just flew into the World Trade Center. And I'm like, what? And then it was 2 airplanes, and I turned on my television set. It's not inexplicable what I felt. I can tell you exactly the shock, the numbness that initially hit, and then I just sat there in complete disbelief, just watching. Like, is this really going on? Am I really watching this right now? And then it got to the point of, I still have to go to work. And I got to, anyway, I had to commute down to Palo Alto, and so I really needed to get on the road. And I sat there, she and I were talking for the longest time, just complete shock. And then I left for work, and I'm in my commute to work, and my boss calls me up, and she said, "Just forget about it, just go home." So I said, okay. I go home, and of course I'm just continue to watch, and I'm just numb. But that numbness started to give away to some real fury and anger. And what I remember the most was my wife. She goes, "We got to get you out of the house and just get you some fresh air." So we went to a restaurant. It was kind of an open air restaurant. And it's around noon. And I'm sitting there in this restaurant, and people around me are just partying like, well, it's a day off, Cocktails are flowing, like completely oblivious, which I think really pissed me off even more. It really did. Right. But I'm sitting there, and I distinctly remember where our seats were, and I looked outside, and there's, back when we had these, the old newspaper containers, and right in the front, the San Francisco Examiner had the picture of the tower burning, and then it just said "bastards" across the top. And that was really when I realized that what I was feeling was exactly what I felt like I should be feeling. And the thing I had to, again, as the day progressed, my anger just got worse and worse. But I also knew exactly what this meant, and I knew it. And I told myself I needed to sleep on what I was feeling. I needed to make sure that when I woke up in 2 days that I felt exactly the same before I actually did anything. And it was September 13th that I ended up, I don't even know if there was one in San Francisco, I didn't even try, but I ended up driving the 45 minutes to an hour south back to San Jose to my original recruiting station. Took my full 201 file, walked in, had my wife with me because I wanted to make sure she was fully understanding of what I sat down, and it was a sergeant first class sitting in front of me, and I gave him my 201 file, and I basically just told him, I want to go back, I want to be a combat medic again, and you're going to put me into a unit that's going to get deployed. Like, I'm not going somewhere to sit on my butt. Like, that's what's going to happen. And he's going through my folder, and at the same time he's kind of looking at my wife, who's also now in the shock is setting into her that I'm dead serious about this. But he's going through my 201 file, and he comes across my deployment to Saudi Arabia, and he looks at me and he goes, "Did you actually deploy on this?" And I said, "Well, yeah." He goes, "Well, then I was with you," because he was 9th Infantry. Small world. I didn't actually know the guy, but And then I remember him looking at me and he's looking at my wife, and he's looking at me, and he goes, "Listen, man, I want you to go home and think about this." He goes, "We have no shortage right now of guys coming back. We're not going to have any problem getting guys, but I want you to be aware." He's pointing to my wife. He's like, "I want you to take this very seriously. Like, I want you to be very," and I'm sitting the whole time going, "No, I'm ready to go, like right now." But I can see my wife; she's now in tears. And so we went home, thought about it. I put up with all, my family is just like, quite literally, you're a fucking idiot. You've done this twice. Why do you want, you've done your time. And it's just like, no, there was that ultimate burning, like I'm young, I'm still young, I'm trained, and I can't, like, this is what you do join the military for, to actually defend your country. So I had to really put a lot of things into thought. And my wife was really upset, really, really upset. My entire family was really upset. But I did listen to what the recruiter had to say, but think about what you wanted. I mean, do you actually want to go back to being a medic, or do you want to do something else? And at the time, I'm going to school for history and political science, and I just thought teaching wasn't exactly, I mean, eventually I'd like to do that, but what can I do now? I did some research about, jobs for people with history degrees, and the first thing that really popped up that hit me was like foreign service. So all of a sudden I'm like, well, this is really interesting. And so I really began to research that a lot more. And that was when I decided to do Army intelligence, because I could go off and participate in the war and do things, while also maybe getting a career on the outside where I can continue to do the same thing, and which is exactly how I wound up from California to now living here in Virginia. I've been working in the intelligence community for coming up on 14 years as a civilian, and then as an Army I came in to be an intelligence analyst, and it's been phenomenal. But I definitely got to go to do my 15 months in Iraq, and then as a civilian I've gone overseas multiple times as well too. So I've gotten it out of my system. I've had the chance to do everything I wanted to do. I continue to support not just the warfighter but our country, and it's been absolutely, I just couldn't see my life going any other direction.
So you go back in as Army intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
What does that entail?
So I went in as an imagery analyst, and well, that doesn't exactly evoke combat. It did allow me to get my hands wet in a lot of things, and so right out of intelligence school, I got my orders to go to Iraq, and they put me into an aviation unit. And I just thought, well, what on earth is an imagery analyst going to do in an aviation unit? So I got tasked. I was tasked in order to go work with Task Force Odin, which became a very famous group on both sides of the coin. So I got to fly in an Army C-12 as a sensor operator, so I had to operate a camera, and then I was also got to work directly with ground forces, guiding troops into air. It was absolutely incredible. It was one of the greatest things I could ever have hoped for. So I had an amazing time, being able to actually talk to the folks on the ground, help guide them through whatever it is they were going through, identify trouble long before they get there, hunt down the bad guys beforehand, and just do a variety of things. Obviously, I can't get into everything, but it became one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. And while keeping myself off the ground and making my family happy and everybody, I definitely won't lie. I mean, there's a large part of me that stays very quiet because, as a former medic, I love infantry guys. There was a lot of good people. So
I interviewed just earlier today a friend of yours, Chris Allen. So he told me a little bit about the mission that you guys were on.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you did was look for IEDs, correct?
We did, yeah.
How do you do that? track down?
That was the thing that Task Force Odin was billed as doing, right? I'll be perfectly honest, I thought we sucked at finding IEDs and we're fantastic at finding people and activity. So I think it was great because, and I think for guys like Chris and I, we flew together quite a bit. Chris and I thought we really paid attention. We actually gave a crap about what we were doing. We paid attention. We talked with our ground contacts. We used a lot of intelligence, other reporting. We did our diligence, and so I think that's what we became good at. As far as the IEDs, I do remember in Baghdad, we certainly I know I was one of the first to report on it, but the Iraqis were doing what they called area beautification in Baghdad, right? So they were building new sidewalks, repairing the roads. And one of the things I got to see one time was what became known as curb-shaped IEDs. And so we were doing route reconnaissance, and I saw where they were doing repairs, and I could see where the repairs were, and there were heat signatures. But one particular part just stood out very much, and so I said, "That's not something I've ever seen." And so called the ground guys in. They said, "No, don't worry about it. That's just area. They're just doing. It's new pavement, new sidewalk." And I thought, no, that's really different than everything else I'm seeing around it. Less than a week later, we were getting full reports that be aware of curb-shaped IEDs because that had gone off, and so that was one thing. But really, to find it, I mean, it was sometimes sheer luck. It was also understanding and knowing the techniques, tactics, and procedures of how they go about placing them. So you would do I don't know if I can get into all of that, but you sort of learned how locals act in particular areas that would help you to say, I think there's something over here, or there were times that they would do particular markings on the ground to let locals know to stay away from here, but you wouldn't know that.
You're looking for stuff that's not ordinary, out of the ordinary stuff.
Yes, but the enemy adapted no problem. Like they were very clever at what they were doing. So from a sensor operator perspective, finding one was really difficult. But activity was something that we could find quite a bit. We found all kinds of stuff. So we would find them before they did or in the act of doing it. That was the big thing. There was one mission I was on where we were just doing route reconnaissance, and our ground guy said, "Hey, look, excuse me, there was an IED that went off last night. Would you mind just going back to that spot and making sure that they didn't put something else in there to redo it again today?" Yeah, no problem. Went over there, get down in there, and sure enough, there's an IED back in the same hole. Right. He goes, "Okay, take a look around, see if you can see anybody." I apologize. Pan the camera out. There's 3 guys. And they're doing something, so I go, okay. So we get with our ground contact, say, "Yep, we've identified 3 guys." He's like, "Okay." He goes, "Keep your eye on them. We're going to send a Bradley down the street. We want to see how they react. If they react, we know we got our guys." So they let us know when the Bradley was coming down the field, down the road. We kept our eyes on them. They said, "Okay, Bradley's on its way," and we see all 3 guys react, hide behind a wall, peeking up over the wall. We're like, "All right, we got our guys." So for the next 3-4 hours, we just kept our eyes on these guys and watched them over the course of that time lay down 8 or 9 IEDs in different areas. And they were basically prepping because they knew the Army was going to be coming through town to do a sweep. So they were basically setting up a full ambush. So we marked not just the spots that had the IEDs, but the houses these guys were working in and out of. And then we waited, and then just to our astonishment, the 3 guys turned into 10 guys. They all went into this house. They all came out, not all of them, but 8 of them came out of the house. And like a Laurel and Hardy act, 8 of them got into this tiny little car and started to drive. And that was when they decided it was a good time to get these guys. And so they eliminated those guys, and then later on that day went in and just eliminated the area and went in and cleaned everything out. And so it was good. Things of that nature. We had a lot of that. The other one that was like astonishing, I'll never forget this. We were doing route reconnaissance one day too, and I come across like freshly dug out crater, freshly dug out. I'm like, that's really nice. I'm taking snapshots of it. I'm going to put this in our report. Zooming the camera up, and I'm getting all these nice pictures. All of a sudden, this car just pulls up. 4 guys get out, open up the trunk, pull out an IED. It's like, well, all right, Merry Christmas. I guess, like, this is astonishing, right? They're putting the IED in the ground. One guy's got a spool of wire. The other 2 get in the car. I'm not going to follow the car. I'm going to watch these guys. And now we're going crazy. Like, all right, we got our guys. Calling the scout weapons team. We're calling in everybody. They're tying the IED up. They're running the wire. They're running it into a field. We pan back out. We look. That car had circled back around, and there was a mud hut about 150 yards out, and there was a bunch of guys there too. And so he starts running the spool back to this house. But we ended up capturing not only this house that was running just a whole strip of the MSR, and we got cameras and then they waited for the guys to get in the car so they could drive away and take care of them as well too. But things of that nature. I mean, those were really just some of the stuff. And Chris and I, we got a report that there was underground tunnels that were being dug under the palm groves. So we spent, I don't know, 6 hours looking at a palm grove one time, and it was probably hour number 2, and then there was nobody around. There wasn't even a lizard, right? And so we're like, okay, this is going to be a long day of doing nothing. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there were 2 people. And so we looked at these 2 people, and then suddenly there were 3 people. Then suddenly there were 4 people. So we're zooming in, and sure enough, we couldn't really identify the actual hole, but it was very clear that humans were popping up from underneath the palm tree. We're like, okay, Merry Christmas again. We found we're talking to our ground guys, and I mean, they were so thankful because they had heard these reports, which seemed unbelievable. But no, we had a video, we had imagery, we wrote full reports, and it was pretty incredible. So there was, I mean, we saw a variety of stuff. I mean, guys laying IEDs, and then the scout weapons team coming in and laying the hellfires. And the most amazing thing I think I ever saw, honestly, was 4 IED emplacers get into like a Mercedes, and the scout weapons had fired their missile, and just before the missile hit, the car takes off. So the missile hits the ground behind them, right? Misses them completely. So clearly they can hear the explosion, and like a Mario Andretti, these guys were driving for their life in a Mercedes on a dirt road, fishtail, like just straight out of a movie, and they're hauling ass out of there. Second missile comes in, misses them again, and they managed to get away. Like, today's your lucky day, my friend. And then, I mean, things of that nature would go on, and just a ton of stuff. And this was 2007, so it was during the whole troop buildup. But it was so it was great, and then it was great for me because I could actually talk to ground commanders and just say, if they were doing a convoy movement, I'm looking 3 miles up ahead. Hey, you got 3 guys on the roof. We're monitoring right now, but why don't you hold off, slow yourself down, because they're definitely observing the fact that you're coming up the road. And then sure enough, all right, I think I got it. Let me just, this is night, so you're looking at infrared. Yep, we got a guy. He's got a rifle. Hold your position. We're going to call scout weapons and finish this one off. Things of that nature. So, while obviously a large part of me always wanted to go back to what I was doing before, this was a way for me to really be a part of the fighting. It was great. I mean, it was really an amazing experience. It really helped me out, and Chris was certainly, he and I were a really dynamic team, and I think it helped us to be where we are in the civilian world now, and both of us do. Like, I couldn't ask for anything more. I did not imagine I would be where I am today. And I can definitely tell you that it all started with that, because when I left Iraq, I was recruited to come to D.C. To do more or less the same thing. But when I was recruited a year later to actually be an instructor to do remote warfare and things of that nature, and that just opened up a lot of doors for me going forward, which has helped me to be where I am today.
Yeah.
So.
How long after 9/11 do you deploy? you?
Oh, for me, it was I didn't deploy for a long time. It was a lot of convincing for my wife because I wasn't able to. Well, I wasn't able. I did not go back in until 2004.
Okay. So you did not. You did think about it. You didn't.
I will not lie. I had a very hard couple years, and I tried to be somebody I wasn't, and I finally got to the point where I had my plan, and then, my first daughter was born in 2003. By early 2004, I need to go back, and this is the path I needed to go down.
Right.
It was not a popular decision, but it was also not doing infantry stuff, and I had a plan of where I wanted to be long term. So my family was, my parents were, okay, if that's what you want to do. It still wasn't great. My wife was not thrilled, but I had a plan. And, obviously she didn't know me in the military before. She had never been around the military. I mean, she was a college educated, working in, a businesswoman working in San Francisco. She had no purview into the military world whatsoever. She had a hard time believing I was even in the military before. So this was for her, it was jumping into the deep end of the pool and not knowing how to swim. So it was a real culture shock for her. So yeah, I had to really give it thought, to a marriage and my family. So yeah, it was 3 years before I finally had the plan. And then I left for AIT, and I went to Intel school in the summer of 2005, graduated in May of 2006. And then I was ordered, had my orders for Iraq in July of 2006. And then I actually left in January of 2007. I came home in April of 2008. And then by July of 2008, I was working in the Intel community here in DC. So yeah, there was a bit of a gap. It was hard. Yeah. It was hard.
You had mentioned something I found interesting. You had said that you kind of made your family happy. You weren't infantry. You weren't on the ground.
My family, again, I mean, I can't do justice to the looks on their faces when they call me quite literally a fucking idiot because I wanted to go back and be a combat medic. I mean, they were viciously angry at me. Like, how could you, you're stupid. Like, how could you want to do this? And it's funny because I know deep down why, and that actually didn't bother me so much because it's just like, all right, I get how you're feeling. Yeah. And I had a lot of close friends sit me down and more or less give me the same spiel. Not you're an idiot, but like you've done this before. You've already been there. It's time for somebody else. You need to further your career elsewhere. What it was, yeah, my other career's just not that interesting. I'm not happy. I loved studying history and political science. I could have easily studied something else, but I studied that because that's where my fascination is. I want to know my experiences in Yugoslavia, especially, not so much Saudi, but Yugoslavia primarily fueled the need for wanting to have more understandings of why things happen. I learned an incredible amount in my 6.5, 7 months in Yugoslavia about why that war was happening. Why did how did it get to be that way? How the hell did Muslim population be so big in a place like Europe? In Europe, I didn't have any concept of it. But once I learned about the ancient history between the Holy Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire going back, and how it really met up in that region of the world, and then you get into things like and people like Tito who managed to you start learning all these things. You're like, well, there's real purpose behind all of this, and when you really understand it. And so when I finally came to the decision that I was really unhappy in just everything I was doing in life, and I had to figure it out, or things were going to get very bad for me. And I just said, I want to do foreign service. Yeah. I looked at the military because I knew I could go in the military, get training, a clearance, experience, and not have to walk in from the ground floor elsewhere. And that's exactly how it's played out.
Yeah. What I find interesting about that statement, that you kind of made them happy you weren't on the ground. You were doing something different.
Yep.
It would make one believe that you're flying in the air, that there's no danger. But that's not necessarily true. I mean, you're
correct, you know, correct. Things did happen.
yeah.
Um,
Was there anything memorable?
yes, my very first mission, very first one out of the gates. 2 hours into it, I'm on the camera system. I got my flight trainer on the other seat. The pilots are up front. 2 hours. We're over Baghdad, and I had never heard the flare system in the airplane work before. So we're sitting there. It's peaceful. It's quiet. I'm scanning the area, looking for stuff, and then all of a sudden, without any warning, the flares start. It sounded like a baseball bat up against the side of the airplane, and then the pilots start screaming and yelling. We're getting shot at. We're getting shot at. We're getting shot at. The planes. They're just. It's like I'm in an air show, right? They're just banking the airplane and screaming and yelling, and you know, this is day one, and I remember just looking up at my other guy, and we just locked eyes, and it was just one of those moments. You're like, well, I guess this is how it ends, right? You know. Turns out it was just fine. But the other, yeah, there were several experiences. That was the first one. Probably the most memorable. I would definitely have to say I was with a new person, more or less training her, 2 experienced pilots. We left at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Pitch black, you fly in blackout, and we take off. The very second the wheels left the ground, there's an instrument called the TCAS, which lets you know that your Air Force, that lets you know other airplanes you're going to collide with them. The second we take off, the thing starts going bananas, and the pilots, I can hear them going, and really I'm as close to you as I was to the pilots. You know, they were like right here behind me, and so I can hear them trying to figure it out, like what is going on. Like they were clearly hearts elevated real quick. They're like, what, I don't understand. Like, and we're still like just getting off the ground, and so now I turn around, and of course we're in blackout, so everything is just completely pitch black out of the aircraft. And now they're starting, like whatever's coming at us is getting closer, and they're starting to lose their minds. Like they're like yelling at each other, and finally the pilot on instruments just goes, he just goes, fuck it, I'm turning on all the exterior lights. I don't care. Reaches over, he's hitting every exterior light he can. The whole plane like lights up, and then the aircraft miss us. And the whole time I'm looking out the front of the window, waiting for like the nose cone of something to come into the windshield. And I thought, and my pilot, the pilot in command, he's just got sweat, literally just pouring down off of him, and so. It ended up being 2 helicopters going right by us, and even before the pilot Chief Bauer, before he could get on the horn and start getting mad at the tower, there was a full-bird colonel flying one of the Blackhawks, and they just were hot micing the whole thing, and it was a scream fest of biblical proportions. Right. So he goes, I guess there's no need for us to call him, because yeah, you were gonna, yeah, we thought it was a done deal on that one. I mean, yeah, there was I don't know what Chris told you, but there was one. He and I were running a mission for a whole week up along the Iranian border, and we were a couple miles off the border, and then on the 3rd day of a 5-day mission, flight ops came in and threw something down from the Secretary of Defense that. Today you will not you will not get closer than 5 miles. That's going to make it tough because we're trying to find transshipment movements coming across, right? But basically the report said the Iranians have been lighting you up, and they said if you had gotten like less than a mile, they would have taken you down. So we were like, okay, we will not go any closer. Yes. So our pilots that day, when we were giving them, because Chris and I would give them grid coordinates of where we needed to be so we can look, they were like, I'm not going that close. So you're like, okay. So that was that, but yeah, there was plenty enough. Fuel gauge doesn't work. Coming in for a landing, suddenly one of the props stopped. Just relax, Schumer. We're gonna be fine. Like, okay, whatever you say. No, but I think I get back to it. You know, I got lots of drama with my family, and I think they obviously seen too many movies, and when I was in Saudi Arabia, for instance, when my command wanted me and one other medic to go with the regiment and one battery, obviously I was very honored because I had the experience and they wanted us to go. My dad goes, literally, he just goes, this is the kind of thing I have to deal with. He just goes, well, how should we prepare your funeral? Like, what? Are you kidding me right now? He's like, well, this is, Dad, it's going to be fine, okay? The whole thing's going to be just fine. Just relax. It's going to, just chill. So that's the kind of stuff that you deal with, and so because they don't have any real knowledge of, I should go back and say my younger brother, who was at 101st, he got messed up in Desert Storm. They hit a mine. He was on the old 5 tons, flipped it. He went out and at the end of the day, he dislocated both his shoulders, which got him medically chaptered. But he was a combat engineer, so they hear his stories. They know what the things that I did, and then of course they've got 24/7 news on, and they've seen all these movies, so they just think, I guess it's not going to be Saving Private Ryan. It's not going to be like that. But it's funny you mention that because there was a couple times where you question your own mortality every bit as much as when things are going down. Yeah. So, but but no, I guess the last one I'll probably tell you. I don't know how much time we got, but where it affects me is we had a mission in Iraq one day that we went up and they gave us a defective airplane, and we were supposed to monitor an engineering unit going on route reconnaissance, and our equipment broke. And we had to turn back and get another airplane. And the engineering unit that we had to support that day was on our base. They were based off of, we were in Tikrit at Spiker. They were in the LSA next to us, and they got hit pretty bad, and we weren't there to overwatch them, and it was pretty bad. And when they were giving us a new airplane because ours was defective, the flight ops came out yelling at us like, "You need to, like they're getting hit right now. Why are you back here?" And we're like, "The airplane is broken. We could, like, the engine was stalling. Right. We were going to crash. Like, that's what the pilots were." And then you have to go to the mess hall that night, dinner, and there's the whole battalion coming in, and they just look like they had just had one of the worst days ever. And there's no more guilty of a feeling than knowing you could have done something better. And you got to look at them. And the only thing you were thankful for, they did not know who the hell you were, but you're just looking at them, and you just wanted to go over and just tell them how sorry you were, but that would not have probably done the trick. So those are days. And when I was in Iraq, things were really discombobulated from a management and leadership perspective at Task Force when I first got there. And so my first 2 weeks in Iraq, I was literally doing absolutely nothing. And this was pissing me off. And so I literally went over on Spiker to the Combat Support Hospital. I still had my Army medic card that I had. And I walked in and I said, I'm Sergeant Aaron Schumer. I'm also a 68 Whiskey. I'm over here with an intel unit. I'm not doing anything. What can I do? And they were like, "Oh, okay." And so that was when my command caught wind. Right. Because I was like, screw it. If they're not going to utilize me, you use me, and I don't care. You put me in an ambulance, I will go. Like, just get me doing something. I'm not going to spend the next 15 months of my life sitting on my butt. And that's when I was in the back of the plane, and I ended up, Chris and we ended up flying well over 800 hours, mission hours, and it was great. We had a really good experience. But yeah, those are the kinds of the frustrations. So, but I love those guys. I mean, they're incredible human beings. I came out here 9 years ago now, almost 10 years ago. The Army Reserve asked me to come out. I came out here in uniform to walk around and meet people and talk to people. And you guys were running. You had a tent over here with veterans that were talking about their story, their wounded warrior stories. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, those guys had some stories, and it's great because we can chat and have some laughs, but at the end of the day, you're not one of them. And you know, I mean, even though I was I was a medic and worked with those guys, they're just in a whole nother level than anything I could be as a medic. And you know, to make that choice and to have that spirit, it's you know, it's something else. So, you know, I've always tried to keep myself as humble as possible, because there are a lot of people that do a lot of things for the greater good that it's impressive for me. You know, they're just yeah. So
You've had time to look back on this. That was the last time you would deploy, correct?
as a soldier, yeah. 2008. As a civilian, I've gone over multiple times. Yeah.
Okay. And contract work, kind of the same thing you were doing, intel or?
It's all intel. I did counter ID, counter HME. We were looking for bomb makers. We did a lot of work in finding the chemicals that were used, where they were coming from, who was shipping them. You know, a lot of that stuff. It was very fascinating work. I learned a whole lot about networks, but also, you know, I got to learn how to build IEDs. I went through a lot. You know, went through training on explosives and learned about chemicals. And in Iraq, or excuse me, in Afghanistan, you know, I was in charge of what we called a calibration site for the sensors. I used to maintain. I think we had almost 4,000 pounds of different types of explosive chemicals. But yeah, no, it was a fantastic experience. I think living in Afghanistan on Kandahar Air Base was far different than Spiker Air Base. Spiker was in the middle of nowhere. Kandahar was right square in the middle of it, and so you're getting things thrown at you all the time. But I got to travel around the country. You know, Bagram, Herat, Mazar-e Sharif, you know, a lot of different places, and just get to experience quite a bit and talk to a number of people, and you know, come up with solutions to problem sets. So I think as a contractor, being you know, being a site manager and really working with ground forces and people and commanders, you know, coming up with problem sets and solutions was, for me, was absolutely fantastic. So yeah.
How do your two experiences differ? Being there as a soldier and then as a contractor.
Oh, night and day. As a contractor, it's I don't know. It's you know, you're not getting to have new PT. You're not having to put up with multiple layers of commands. You know, everything's really cut and dry. We're the ones responsible for ourselves, our op tempo, our mission tempo. You know, it's much different from a level of responsibility too. And I say that because as an Army sergeant, not only do you have to have your mission, you yourself squared away, know your job, know yourself, and then you're managing whatever you have to manage, but then you've also got X number amount of soldiers that are coming to you with all of life's issues, you know. And I think from a stress level, you just no comparison. It's super high as a soldier, super low as a contractor for the most part. You know, as a section sergeant and a platoon sergeant in Iraq, you're dealing with a lot of soldiers who are going through a whole lot at home. They are, you know, whether it be missing the births of their children, divorces. We had one guy whose wife was having severe physical issues after giving birth to a child, and she had been hospitalized, and they weren't letting him go home, and so I'm having to bring him over, and just to have him sit with us. I can tell this story now because it's been a long time, but in between my time of being a medic and going in intel, I did a lot of home brewing. And I also spent a couple years as a professional brewer, which is actually how I met my wife. So in Iraq, when we got extended, my commander, I had been talking like, God, it'd be great to brew beer out here, right? We're not going to do it. But then my battalion commander, great guy, he enjoyed beer and everything, and he just goes, he comes up to me one night and he goes, so Aaron, I heard you can brew beer. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that here, sir. He goes, no. So look, if you can do it, I'll cover you. He goes, it would be very refreshing for us to do. I'm like, okay. And so one of our other pilots, his sister worked for DHL. So what I did was I went online and I ordered a full extract brewing kit with 3 batches to brew. All the sanitation I needed, everything, yeast, hops, you name it. Had it shipped to his sister in San Diego so she could repackage it. Because the last thing we wanted was 4 big boxes saying Kennywood Brewing Supplies coming to Iraq. And so she repackaged it, had it shipped out, and I was getting my crew rest one night, and my hooch door flies open, and my buddy puts down the 4 big boxes. I'm like, hey, my brewing equipment has arrived. So we ended up going over to the PX there on Spiker, and I bought a Weber grill, a bunch of charcoal, and then I ended up I don't even know how we got it, but we got a huge cooler that I could fill up with water and the sanitation solution, and then I went to the PX and also bought 2 cases of the non-alcoholic beer. Right. Took it back, poured it out because it's disgusting, cleaned them out, and then sanitized those bottles. That's what I was going to use to bottle the beer. And I ended up going over to the chow hall and talking to the KBR guys. I'm like, hey man, we're gonna have a cookout for our unit. Can you like spare like a 15-gallon pot? He goes, oh yeah, no problem. I go, can you give me like a stirring spoon? He's like, no problem. He goes, bring it back whenever you're done. Yeah. Okay. So I had the pot that I needed. Right by our LSA was the truck full of clean water bottles. So I had good clean water. I didn't have to worry about having to sterilize or do things with the water to get it better. So we started brewing beer. I started doing it like 1 o'clock in the morning, and yeah. So anyway, I had to figure out how to ferment it too, and there was no way to do it than just keeping it out in the open because we don't have there was no way to do it. So what I did was, when you walked to our hooch, I had my fold out chair that I had purchased, and I put like a pair of my BDUs so you couldn't see through the chair, and then behind the chair wasn't the bucket, right? We kept our room at a pretty good like 55, 60 degree because it was hot as hell outside, and so we had a lot of natural refrigeration in our and anyway we got it, and it was a real experiment because I wasn't sure if the yeast was going to have been able to survive the trip, and so and then everybody's like, well, how are you going to know? And I said, well, if after 72 hours we don't see any bubbles coming out of there, we're screwed. And 72 hours came and went, and there was no bubbles. And I'm like, God, that sucks. So I'm like, all right, I'll figure it out tomorrow and dump it out tomorrow or something like that. Day later, I come back and I can see bubbles. I'm like, okay. And then the bubbles picked up. So it took a little longer for it to regenerate, and then we had it. And then it was a lot. It was great. The first batch that we bottled, one of our guys who had no idea that we were involved in this, just decided he didn't feel like knocking at my hooch. He just walked into the hooch, and here we are bottling. And he goes, "What are you guys doing?" What are you doing? And it was pretty funny because the cat was out of the bag at that point, and we had a pretty bitter E6 that they fired from being a platoon sergeant, and they put me into that position. Right. So he was not too happy with command, and so he went to 1st Infantry Division. Oh, and I was also the EO rep for our unit, right? So I was good friends with the guys up at battalion or division for 1st Infantry, and this E6 went up to the EO guy and the sergeant major for 1st Infantry Division, and he thought he was being slick and doing it. Well, the EO guy that knew me calls me. He's like, "Hey, Schumer, I just need you to know that he was a particular E6 just came here and ratted you guys out with alcohol." And I'm like, I know exactly who it is. Went to my commander. I said, "You should have gotten rid of this guy a long time ago." But it was really funny because division was like, whatever. They were more mad this guy was trying to rat somebody else out. So I was doing a command and climate survey for our battalion, and my battalion commander, he was a big helicopter pilot, and we're having our one-on-one meeting. It's me, the colonel, and the command sergeant major, and I go at the end of our command and climate survey. He goes, I go, is there anything else you want? I said, yeah, we really should kind of talk about the alcohol. I mean, what's your plan? I like to drink too, Schumer, when I'm in Texas. Okay, sir. And he just leans across the table and he goes, you tell everybody I'm going to come through next Tuesday at 1700 for an inspection if I find anything. And I'm like, roger that, sir. So anyway, it was pretty funny. And by the way, this just popped into my head. I think Chris, to go back to one of your previous questions about experiences, I'm pretty sure Chris told you about our big incident in Iraq where well, I don't know if he did or he did not. It wasn't one of those things that I questioned my mortality. It was, we had been given reports about enemy movements and the fact that they drove a particular vehicle with a particular weapon attached to that vehicle, and that if it wasn't marked a particular way, then it was the bad guys. And it was not, I don't want to call it the holy grail of things to find, but we found it. And we went through a couple of hours of verification and watching these guys, and we ended up calling an airstrike in. And yeah, it was a very hectic day. And yeah, it's been a long time. So we identified the behavior and the activity, and nobody questioned that it was the bad guys. What happened was, I have two very experienced pilots up there, and one of them asked me, who's the authority for this? And I found that to be very confusing to me, because here you are, a 20-year pilot asking an E5 with about 12 months experience in this particular role. And so I thought it was me, because I'm the one identifying the behavior. I'm the mission manager. It's my responsibility. We had, and you know, this is a deeper story, but we had one of our main radios was not working, so we were down to one radio, and was not the more powerful one, but they decided to send us out on the mission anyway, and our ground contacts verified, yeah, there's no friendly forces in the area, and so my pilot goes, Sergeant Schumer, what do you want to do? Do you want to call a scout weapons team or not? And I said, yeah, I mean, with everything we have in front of us, like that's, there's no other real choice. And so, you know, we called the scout weapons team in, did our verifications, and then the A-10 came in and dropped its first bomb. It missed by like 300 yards. It was astonishing. So we're focused on the target and everybody in it. And then all of a sudden, you see everybody like look up, and you see him running to the edge of the berm, and the pilot goes, "Man, I'm really sorry, I missed. I'm coming around again for the second one." I'm like, and so we pan out, and we see the mushroom cloud like 300 yards off. I'm like, "Yeah, you missed." Oh, it wasn't just people looking at the berm. We saw people like running for their lives, but a bunch of others didn't run at all. And this really confused the situation. And by that point, he had already circled back around and had released the second one. And that one was right on target. So at this point now, you got casualties, you got everything going on. And but that freaking truck with the thing wasn't destroyed. And we have to destroy that particular piece of equipment. And you're like, how can that thing get hit and not be destroyed for the love of humanity? So we waited for them to collect their casualties, get everybody out of there. I said, look, just let them get out of there, and then we'll finish this off. And they were, at that point, the A-10 had run out of ammunition. They split, but we had already had the Apaches were already in, and they were ready to rock and roll. And so they said, what do you want us to do? Is everything, what's bad in that you want us to take out? And we were just like, everything. Like we've identified, like everything in there is just going to be bad. They lit that place up, and I mean, there was clearly weapon storage. The things were just, it was insane. And then it was over, and they were like, hey, because they had to go far out. They're like, we're out of fuel. We're going to head back. All right. On their way back, they identified another Dishka weapon on a tripod. They said, come to this spot. We may have set them off. They obviously clearly would have seen us. you know, and that's when it came in that there was we heard radio chatter about possible blue on green, and so I didn't know what that was at that moment. My pilot, 20 years experience, should have absolutely known what the hell that was. But he goes, Schumer, can you radio them and ask them what blue on green is? And so like, okay, hey, what's a blue on green? That's U.S. on ground force. And now I just was like, what do we do? And so, yeah, we had to go through, we got back, go through an investigation. And in the end, no one ever questioned whether what we found was bad. What it was I was not the authority. That's an officer job, right?
Right.
So yeah, I made my mistake, but it was really, really, really hard on Chris, real hard on him. But you know, it wasn't his responsibility; it was mine. So yeah, I did what I had to do and pleaded my case, and everything was fine for me in the long run. I went through a lot of headache and a lot of finger pointing, but I learned my lesson, and you know, it's funny because in those moments you know, I have no idea what other wars were like in the past. You know, it took me back to The Thin Red Line. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. It's absolutely one of my favorite movies, and that movie got into the giving the orders, even though you know the orders are, and it was one of those, like, there are people that give an order but don't want to actually take the full responsibility of the orders that they're giving, right? So it got down to that, and in the end I found a lot of things very disheartening, I'll just say. They were life-changing for me. So, but you know, I've always taken my role as a sergeant and managing people very, very seriously, and you know, I'm still in today. I've got another year before I can fully retire. I've put in almost 30, but it's paying for my daughter's college right now, so I'll take that. But you know, as a first sergeant now, all those experiences come in and play a huge role in managing people. And you know, I won't lie. I mean, I have always been rewarded for my work. It's always been rewarded. I've been blessed with very good people who have taken very good care of me, for the most part. You know, I can look at some of the letters that were written and some of the things that were done by people, you know, and it's great. I wouldn't exchange my experiences for anything, and I think I don't think there's anything else in the world, any other profession, any other experience than the military, where you will meet such a vast, diverse group of people, but also get the best friends of your entire life. Just to the core. There are guys that I still know that I went through basic with. There are guys that I know. One of my best friends, he was my battle in Yugoslavia, and we're still really close. Like like Chris and I met him. I'd already been in Iraq for 6 months when he showed up, and they tasked me with training him, and he and I are still, we're gonna be lifelong friends, and so that's in that same group. So yeah.
One of the reasons that we do these interviews is to capture it and preserve your story for your kids and your grandkids and somebody else's grandkids down the road. What would be a message you want to send them? Somebody watches this in 50 years, 100 years.
Oh wow, that's a great question. It's a really good question. Well, to my grandkids, to other family members, you'll probably hear a lot of things said about a lot of wars and a lot of people who served in wars. I certainly hope that doesn't come to define what you think of me. I've cared beyond measure about my country, my fellow citizens, myself, my family. For me, it was never anything more than having a real understanding of the whole picture. I can't really explain whatever changed in me to want to be able to want to do that. I just know that it did. And I honestly hope to God you never have to go through a day like September 11th, as my grandfather did with Pearl Harbor. You know, for those that think war is glorious, it's not. It's not the movies. It's not pretty. It doesn't smell good. It doesn't taste good. There are experiences that live with you forever. It changes you for the better and for the worse, permanently. But, you know, I did it, but I think for all the right reasons. I think I did it just out of a sense of, duty for my own country. I won't change it for anything in the world. I value those experiences more than anything else. I don't think I talk about anything. When I focus on funny stories, well, basic training was the worst 10 weeks of my entire life, literally. It's also some of the funniest 10 weeks of my entire life. And even though deployments were horrible for the most part, lonely, boring, having to put up with other people snoring, farting, burping, whatever their personal hygiene habits were, you share laughs that can't be duplicated anywhere else. No comedian can make that stuff up, and it just gives whole new meaning to a lot of different things. It makes you appreciate everything you have. It makes you, all those things wrapped up into one. But I think if that's the message I would pass on, because I remember going back into the Army in 2004, and you get people with their personal views of the world, and they think you support a certain agenda, and that's just not the case. I think if everybody knew me for why I decided to do it again, I absolutely felt a very, very deep sense of duty to take my experience and my knowledge and not let that sit at a bar in San Francisco and enjoy a cocktail while others sacrifice their time. You know, and then since I can now say I'm coming up on, this last April makes 30 years ago that I stepped into Fort Leonard Wood, and 2 days before my 23rd birthday, you know, and started on a path of, you know, and I don't expect everybody to do this. It just I happened to find a path that worked well for me. But it's been very rewarding, very frustrating, very angering at a lot of times, but experiences and things I will never, ever, ever forget. So,
well, on behalf of the Americans of Wartime Experience, thank you for sitting down, telling your story, taking some time out of your day. And more importantly, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.